Hello, my lovelies. I thought we'd do a special edition of Refashioned to cover Fashion Month, covering everything that happened during the shows and everything that happened outside of the shows too, since Fashion Month is definitely not just about the catwalks. And I thought it'd be fun to break down the trends I saw happening in the industry, talk about the things I got up to, and yeah, just have a good old yap. So let's just get into it. Before we do, welcome back to the Refashioned podcast, where we talk a lot about sustainable fashion and I try to de-influence you from fast fashion. If that sounds good to you, if you enjoy this episode, then make sure to subscribe or follow wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast on. And with that, let's start by talking about all of the things I got up to this London Fashion Week. I actually ended up not going to as many events as normal this season, but because everyone comes into the capital for the shows, I caught up with so many people that I ended up being busy almost every day and subsequently did suffer from Fashion Month fatigue and had to have a couple of days off resting, but it was very much worth it and I managed to make it to a few events, including the first one I went to, which was the vinted Oxfam runway, and I really enjoyed this. It was my second year going and I almost didn't make the runway in time because I was faffing with my outfit at home for like an hour beforehand and realized I needed to leave like 10 minutes before I actually got out the door. So I turned up to the event like sweating in these heels that I don't normally wear, and I got to the barriers, and because I was down as press rather than as an influencer, they took me past like a line of people to get my seat since I was supposed to be there half an hour before everyone else. Anyway, I managed to find my seat in time and the show started. It was really good. I love that they did like a decades through fashion thing and they had the music to go with it and all of these fun outfits are walking down the runway. There were a couple of celebrities there too. I'm not sure if my American audience will know who Sam Ryder is from Eurovision, but they were walking down the runway. Jamila Jamil was in the audience, but the clothes themselves were the main event. I absolutely love secondhand fashion shows where they put clothes that people have already bought down the runway and give it the same glamour and romanticization as a new collection and really just show the potential of what you could do from thrifted finds people have actually donated to the Oxfam stores or on Vinted. They closed the show with this gorgeous wedding dress look that I absolutely loved, and because we know I'm in my bridal era, I was paying particular attention to this, so that was actually really fun to see. And not only that, at the end of the show, as I was leaving, I saw that they had branded Tony's bars that you could take for free, like a full-on, full-size Tony's bar. And honestly, I need that to be the party favor for every single event I go to in the future. I think the eBay pre-love runway was on the same night, hence I probably wouldn't have been able to go to it. But I did catch the end of the live stream they did on their Instagram as I was traveling, and that looked quite interesting. I only managed to catch the end, which was being hosted by Amelia de Moldenberg, where I think she just went through a few of the pieces that had been on the runway. And although I like her and I think she has a fun personality, it did feel a bit teleshopping channel to me. And although it's pre-loved and we're not exactly encouraging people to shop like fast fashion mindlessly, it did feel a little bit impulse buy to me. Like, here's the thing on screen, shop it now before someone else does. I don't know. I'm kind of torn between the fact that this is like a fun way of showing exactly what you can get for secondhand, but also the like impulse, grab it while you can vibe kind of mars that. I don't know. I'd love to know what you guys think about that. What's the other thing I did this fashion week? Oh yeah, I went to a protest hosted by Labour Behind the Label, which was against billionaires in fashion, and the team had put so much effort into it. They literally designed a whole street theatre performance around orcas sinking billionaire yachts, and it's always really fun for me to go to a protest during Fashion Month. I think having the media's attention there for the shows makes it such a good time to talk about these important issues, and I think it was quite a timely protest given that H&M were literally taking over London Fashion Week, which we're gonna discuss in a minute. I think that was mostly the end for what I did during Fashion Week. I did manage to go to the Loom pop-up that's currently being hosted in Notting Hill and ends on Sunday, and that was so nice to go in and see all of these upcycling designers actually in person and get to see their stuff. I tried on this amazing coat from my friend Yev at Roxor, whose name you might recognize from this channel as doing the upcycled waistcoat from my other video, and I also tried on a couple of other pieces and did end up buying something which I can't wait to show you guys in a future video, or probably probably on Instagram sooner. So if you want to see it sooner, make sure you're following me on there. But yeah, there's something I love about Fashion Week in London and how it completely takes over the city. There's so many things happening. It feels so buzzy. I like think way more about my outfits every time I go out, even if I'm not going to a fashion show. I just love the energy. And I feel like London Fashion Week this September felt very buzzy. It felt like there was a different energy in the air, and that was really fun. However, as I said, I went to less events this season, and I actually got invited to less events than previous years, which may or may not say something about where the industry is focusing right now. It could be that they're focusing less on sustainability coverage and just pushing your average influencer. I don't know. It's also a very valid idea that I just didn't get invited this year. But I also didn't see much sustainability coverage happening online either. And when I was discussing this with friends, we agreed that it feels like Fashion Week and sustainability events feel very separate in the calendar. And it's very hard to know what's going on. There's not much talk about what's happening in the sustainable fashion field right now, which is obviously disappointing. And I think also something the industry needs to start prioritizing, given that London Fashion Week is apparently trying to become a sustainability leader and they've said they're going to be adopting Copenhagen's sustainability framework. You'd think that this would be something they want to champion more and talk about and invite, okay, maybe not just me, but like sustainability influencers and coverage too. Speaking of, actually, there wasn't much talk about London adopting Copenhagen's framework this season, even though it's supposed to be implemented soon. I was honestly expecting more, but I suppose because of all the greenwashing allegations that happened with Copenhagen earlier this year, maybe London decided to lay low on this, or maybe they're just waiting for the framework to actually be implemented for most of the shows. I don't know, but I definitely wasn't expecting so little coverage on sustainability. I don't know, it feels weird. Moving away from just London and talking about Fashion Month in particular, my takeaway from the whole month and what I've seen other people reporting on online, it seems like creative directors are really trying to stick to like timeless styles and very monochromatic colors this season. Like, I didn't see any overwhelming color trends. And I wonder if this goes back to something we talked about on the tariff videos I've done recently, and how designers are sticking to timeless styles because they were worried about the delivery times for this collection. And so they didn't want to be stuck with micro trendy styles that might have gone out of fashion even before they were delivered. But I also think there's a lot of uncertainty, not just about the tariff situation, but for the industry in general. I mean, we had a major shakeup of creative directors for fashion houses this season and a lot of director debuts. And I wonder if that lent into the idea of fashion going back to its roots and directors trying to prove that they understand the heritage of the brands they've just joined. I don't know, because on one hand, I can see this being a thing, and I think it's a pretty known tactic for when you get a new creative designer for them to like slowly ease themselves into the brand before they start massively changing the direction. But I also think there's a lot of outside influence for this lack of trends, lack of colors of the season. I mean, we didn't even really get like a trending aesthetic of the summer that we normally do from TikTok this year. And I think this goes back to something I mentioned many times, which is that the social conversation is kind of anti-trend right now. I mean, we did have the occasional big trend like butter yellow, but it's not as if we had like an overwhelming overarching theme like Brat Summer or Barbie Summer, and not even that many micro trends either. And that's kind of carried into autumn too. And I'm thinking maybe brands at some level sensed this mood shift and decided to play it safe with their own collections. I don't know, what do we think? Do we think it's an amalgamation of these reasons? Do we think there's an overwhelming reason? It did also feel less gimmicky this season when it came to the shows themselves. I don't know if anyone else noticed, but I didn't really see any like standing up and taking the tablecloth as your dress moments, or any big stunts really, other than having the internet's favorite person sit front row. And I wonder if this is another reflection of the industry being uncertain about profits, or maybe self-aware of the negative sentiment circling online about luxury fashion and how it already feels fast fashiony without the need for gimmicks and viral moments. I'm not sure. I just think there were less big PR stunts that made a viral meme this season, and that's kind of weird. Although saying this, there were one or two stunts that I want to talk about, like the fact Miranda Priestley sat front row across from her real life inspiration at a fashion show. I find it so interesting that an actual fashion show agreed to be part of the filming for Devil Wears Prada and let Meryl Streep and Stanley Tucci sit front row for their designs. I mean, obviously it's great publicity and this has so made the rounds on social media, but I also think it's a reflection of how close fashion and film are getting. And I kind of want to do a new video examining this and examining fashion's growing relationship to the screen and their motives behind it, because I think it could be quite interesting to talk about. I just went to the new Marie Antoinette exhibit happening at the V&A, and a lot of the dresses on display were from film adaptations of her life and how fashion worked very closely with these directors to really get the costumes right. Of course, Sophie Coppola's one comes to mind, but I feel like at a certain point, fashion kind of forgot about film for a little bit, and we had much less collaborations, let alone the peak that was Sophie Coppola's costume design. And now we're slowly cresting the wave again, and fashion is getting more interested in the big screen outside of dressing actors and actresses for their red carpets. And yeah, I think it's so interesting that I want to talk about it. Also, do we feel like The Devil Wears Prada sequel is getting a lot of media attention, or is it just me? I feel like I'm hearing so much about this film. I've seen almost all of the outfits that are going to appear, and I'm also seeing a lot of discourse about how the outfits look bad on social media. I mean, I did see a very funny TikTok of someone calling it The Devil Wears Zara. Okay, but yeah, sorry, back to the big news events, press stunts that were happening during Fashion Month, because we have to talk about H&M taking over London. And when I say taking over, they literally had a whole day full of panels and discussions and then a fashion show concert thing. And my question is like, why? I think if we were going to analyze it, it's a pretty simple answer. It goes back to something I've talked about in a couple of videos now about how fast fashion has been usurped by ultra fast fashion, and they're now trying to prove their cultural relevance to people. And in this case, H&M is trying to ingrain itself in other areas of pop culture to prove it has cultural relevance or improve its reputation as more than just a fast fashion brand. Whether they're succeeding in this, I'm not sure. And if I'm being honest, I did think that some parts of the event were quite cool. But what got to me was how positive the press were about this, how much they made out like H&M is this big deal that almost saved London Fashion Week and injected it with energy. I don't like this. I think the idea that a fast fashion brand is being made out to have so much power and cultural relevance over something like London Fashion Week, it just doesn't sit right to me. I don't think the brand should have been allowed to take over this much of the schedule, especially given that London is trying to adapt its image and make itself out to be the most sustainable of the big four. These two things just don't seem to gel to me. As for the events itself, I think it was quite interesting that one magazine called the event part runway, part concert, part living magazine. I'll hold my hands up and say that the event itself seemed quite fun. It's just the brand and their environmental impact that I have a bone to pick with. I actually did like the fact they allowed people to get tickets for free via social media, because I think anything that democratizes Fashion Week is important. But there's also a little devil on my shoulder about this move, saying that H&M only did this so they can build a reputation of being important and like for the people while still hawking fast fashion. As you can tell, I'm so conflicted. There were a couple of other campaigns that happened this fashion month that I spoke about in my last video, so that could be fun to watch if you're enjoying this analysis, especially because I talked on there about the Nike Skims fiasco, which, as someone actually pointed out to me, is a new brand rather than a collaboration, which I didn't understand and absolutely hate. But one thing I didn't mention, I want to mention before we wrap up this video, was something that the average person probably didn't know happened during this fashion week. I think it's super interesting when it comes to big public events like Fashion Month to get an inside glimpse into what's happening outside of the public eye. And this newsletter from Imran Ahmed describing a private event he went to is a very good look about what happens behind closed doors. So Imran's newsletter was super interesting. He covered a private breakfast event that happened during Milan Fashion Week between journalists like him and Italian fashion leaders that apparently turned into a moaning session about how the industry has been covering the recent scandals. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, then the Italian manufacturing sector has recently undergone a string of investigations looking into allegations of workers' rights abuse for major luxury fashion brands like Armani, Dior, Loro Piana, and Valentino. According to Imran, the fashion leaders at this breakfast said this was the worst they'd seen the market since 2008, and they apparently apparently implored the attending members of the press to be more positive in their coverage of Italy's fashion sector. Apparently, leaders insisted that these incidents reflect issues in only a tiny fraction of Italy's manufacturing base. But as Imran said, it's not the job of the media to sugarcoat what Milanese prosecutors have described as a system of exploitation so entrenched and proven that it could be considered part of a broader business policy exclusively aimed at increasing profit. I'm not surprised that fashion leaders were moaning about profits and asking the press to lay off, but I am surprised that Imran reported this, and I love that he did. It's actually classic that rather than trying to reform their image by being transparent about issues or actually breaking down their system and rebuilding it into something more ethical, brands are simply asking people to just not talk about it. I mean, I would say that this isn't a bad PR move and that the internet moves on very quickly, but looking at a recent post from Outlander magazine covering Laura Piana's new collection and their weird little hats, it seems people are not forgetting. People were even mad at Outlander magazine for covering this without addressing the allegations too. So it seems like the luxury fashion headache is going to go on a while longer, and I couldn't be happier. Okay, I think that was the last thing I wanted to discuss on the Fashion Month briefing. Let me know if I missed anything out though, if I missed any big PR stunts, and what you thought of the creative director shakeup. Who was your favorite designer who debuted this season? One thing's for sure, I saw a lot of Burberry being pushed online, and also in person I saw actually quite a cute like Burberry print wrapped bus, and I feel like the brand is really pushing for the revamp. I'm just not sure whether it's working or not. My Instagram channel had thoughts on this, and I want to hear your thoughts on this in the comments too, so literally just bombard me with all your thoughts on what I've said. I love hearing about them, and I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you so much for listening to Refashioned. Make sure you're subscribed or you're following wherever you're listening to this on, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye.